Welcome back to the OB1 channel. Here we are back with, again, the 65 F-Fun 100. However, we have a 66 frame here. We believe it to be a 66 frame. Locally here, we have a junkyard that had been around a long time, actually. But it has changed ownership, and I basically wanted to go out and meet the new guy and see how he's going to be, as far as, how friendly and all that he's going to be, and he seems to be great. So that's awesome. What we got here is, again, what we believe to be a 1966 frame. The cab was actually still on it at the time. It was actually sitting down in the dirt, as you see it right now, basically. Sitting down in the dirt. The cab was still on it. The doors, hood, engine, all that was removed and gone. The box was gone. And it was just sitting there basically like this, with a cab on it. An empty cab, basically. I didn't remember, but I think the dash was missing. I mean, everything was really missing, so we couldn't really identify it. But when you look at the stamped or molded or whatever you want to call numbers on the I-beam arms there, it is 1960. It says C5, so 65. And then somewhere around here, I don't remember where. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but somewhere around here. Oh, there it is. I think it right there. You can't really quite see it. I got to wire brush it or whatever. But my point is that it says C6 on the frame, so that's why we believe it to be a 66 frame. And from what we understand, it should actually be very similar, if not the exact same, as that 65 sitting over there. Now, I actually got underneath this thing the other day, the actual pickup here, the 65, and what I noticed is that, for example, on this particular frame, you've got the transmission cross member here, which they look similar, but you have one bolt over there and one bolt over here holding the transmission cross member in. And I noticed on mine, I have actually a bolt and a bolt. So I got 4 bolts actually hanging my transmission cross member in place. But it seems to be the same single through bolt kind of design there. So I don't know, maybe if they changed that design in 1966, or if, it was a 4-speed or whatever, because again, this thing was completely empty when I got to it. The other thing that I noticed on mine, you get underneath there, and there's like a strap. Let's see here. There's a strap from this rear spring shackle brace right here, from here over to this one, to this brace that goes across there. There's like a strap, and I mean, big deal. I'm going to take it out, but all right, so what are we going to do here? Well, what we want to do is we want to actually take and rebuild this entire frame here before, and then that way it's all done, and then we can actually transfer the body, the pickup and everything over onto this frame. That is the plan. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to stick with the twin I-beam suspension, because that has already been decided. By the way, this plate right here is something that somebody added. I have no idea why, but it's coming out, obviously. I'm going to stick with the twin I-beam suspension. I've been thinking about doing the Ford Explorer spring swap out that everybody is doing, but as you can see here, this one's kind of like, this shock mount is actually broke right there, and I want to do a 4-link in the back. And when I do the 4-link in the back, there'll be coilovers back there, shocks and springs. So my thought is that I might even come up with a way to do that up here in front as well. The reason being is it keeps it all the same, and I don't have to actually rebuild that shock mount, which I know would be pretty simple to do probably, but yet at the same time, why not have, like, maybe, cut this out, build a new plate, put in the like an eyelet type coil over shock that can bolt down there, make a bracket down there as well, It's going to have a bearing pivot, of course, because the way the twin I-beam suspension works, as you can see, when it comes down, it really points that mounting point, you know, at quite an angle. So there's some things to think about here. But my thought is this: if I want to lower and raise the actual suspension up front, one of the things I can do is I can add spacers right here, and that would actually raise the shock mounting upwards and thereby lowering the vehicle. Of course, you will have to bend the twin I-beam arms in order to, you know, get the alignment correct, but I mean, it does give a lot of versatility that way. Because here's the thing: making those kind of shock mounts up here is easy to do, because when you look underneath here, you can see that there's a whole bunch of room here. There's just nothing to interfere. So actually cutting this off, welding in another plate to make this flat so that you can put some spacers here to space that up would actually be a good thing. But again, you'll obviously have to adjust those I-beams in order to get your alignment, especially your camber, correct. So that is the good news with actually changing all of that. I don't know if I want to go through all that or not. I'm still debating on that, because again, I could simply just go find a shock mount right here, unbolt it, put a new one in, buy some regular shocks, and put those Ford Explorer springs in like everybody else does, and that'll probably just fix that problem real quick, rather than spending all that time doing the other. But at the same time, it's going to get a 4-link rear end. You're going to have coilovers back here, so it would just be kind of nice to have those adjustable shocks back here as on the front as well. That way everything's all the same, and it would make this thing very unique in that way as well. So still debating on that, but that's the plan anyway. So twin I-beam front suspension. I have CPP or CCP or CPP out in California. Got their 13-inch big brake kit, supposed to fit the 17-inch wheels that I have. So I have disc brakes, twin I-beam. Everything is all polyurethane bushing now. Again, still trying to decide what we're doing for the front there. So, but that'll all be, you know, typical. So that transmission cross member there, I don't know which one we'll use. I don't know how we'll use it, because the plan is a 5-liter 302 kind of modern roller block. When I say modern, you know, 30 years old at this point, but, and a 6R80 transmission. That's the plan. I don't know if we're going to do a 2-piece or a 1-piece driveline. I've heard that you can get away with a 1-piece driveline, but that is a long stretch. Plus, 6R80 transmission has that funky flange on the back there that actually, you know, doesn't give you any kind of slip yoke. So I don't know how we're going to do that, but if we can make it work with a 1-piece, that's how I'd like to do it, and hopefully aluminum, if we can do it that way. And then the rear 9-inch, I'm going to keep it a 9-inch. I don't know what gear ratio this is. I kind of spun it a little bit myself, and I think that it's like a 325. I know those are 350s in there, and I want the 350s, especially if I do the 6R80. Might even go to a 373, but anyway, that's where we're going to be landing there. 4-link rear suspension with coilovers, so we got to figure out how we're going to do that. There's all kinds of kits out there. There's all kinds of ways to achieve that. I just don't know if I'm going to do the parallel bars or the triangulated bars or a 3 or whatever. But of course, when that happens, that will lower this thing. And when that lowers this thing, you have to think about, you know, how things are going to be coming up and hitting the bottom of the box. So there's a lot of things to think about there. But I don't know which way we're going with that yet, but we will make that decision at some point. But it will be 4-link for sure. And then back here, fuel tank. So we're going to be taking the fuel tank out from behind the cab, and we'll be putting a fuel tank here. As of right now, I've heard the Ford Bronco 2. If you remember the Bronco 2 back in the 80s and 90s, I heard that that's 23-gallon tank that fits in here pretty good. There's somebody out there that's done it before, and they've got instructions on how to make it happen. I heard that the full-size Bronco can fit in here with a little bit of, trimming and whatnot. I've also heard that the Mustang tank, like the 69, 70 Mustang tank, fits in here, but then you gotta actually bring the fuel filler up through the floor. I don't want to do that. I want mine to come out to the side so I can fill to the side. And I've been investigating the Suburban tank. 80s and 90s Suburban tank. 80s tank is for carburetors, basically, because they have the carbureted sending unit, and then the 90s has the electric fuel pump for the TBIs and that kind of stuff. So that's the one I've been looking at, because the measurements of the tank manufacturer that I found will actually fit inside here without any cutting that I can tell, at least at this point. Just the thing is that when you do the 25-gallon tank, by the way, it is 9 3/4, 9.5 thick. And if you do the 33-gallon tank, which is kind of cool because I know a lot of people like to actually get more fuel, it is over 12 inches thick. So it would hang down quite a bit, but would it hang below the axle? Probably not. But you could always build a plate underneath there, a protection plate too, I guess. But again, really depends on how you plan to use the truck, right? So that's the other thing that needs to be done, is figuring out how to put that fuel tank in there. This will be EFI, so we obviously want to use the fuel injected version. And then, of course, I forgot to mention when I was over here, the C-notch. We're going to put a C-notch in, because once you put the 4-link in, that will lower this thing. Unless, of course, you do a 4-link that is, set up to actually, put the axle down a long ways. But I do like the way this thing sits already. It is factory. The only thing is, I wish the front were just 2 inches lower, because it sticks up just a little bit. And I wouldn't mind the back end being just a little bit higher for a rake, but at the same time, I kind of want it level. So I know that when I put a 4-link there, unless you're building some fancy setup or something that, all these kits, basically, when you go with the kit version, it's going to lower the rear end quite a bit. So I don't really want to sink that too much more than that, but I don't know. Got to do a lot of measurements yet, and that will determine really where I'm going next with this, I guess. So C-notch kit, fuel tank, all of that. But this is basically what I'm going to be doing, building this whole thing up, so that way I can keep driving that. I don't know if you've been following along, but I put a radio in there. It's still kind of a wire mess up there. I need to kind of clean it up and tuck it away. But we're really close to getting that done, basically, as far as, where I want to be for now. And then I want to just keep driving this thing as it is, using it. This is, like I said, I truly believe this is all original, 62,000 miles on it. It is just like this sucker right here, where the bushings and everything are all rotted out underneath there. I know those are the original drum brakes. I took off the back. I didn't take off the front. But my point is that I'm trying to get by with it right now. The clutch seems to be working, but it is chattering pretty good right now, but it works. So I'm just trying to keep it going as it is right now, not spend a lot of money on it, so to speak. Just, keep it clean, keep it running, use it. It is reliable, I will say that. As far as that engine runs great. The 3-speed shifts, third gear is a little tricky sometimes, but once you get it in there, it holds good. You just need to kind of keep that thing clean, keep it running, be able to use it as I need it, because I do use it quite a bit, believe it or not. And then get this thing all completely rebuilt, because my choices are rebuild all that on my back, or over here on the side, rebuild all this and get it to exactly where I want it. And then, in the meantime, keep driving that, and then swap it over. And then once I start swapping it over, of course, that's when I'm going to start tackling, like, for example, got a little bit of rust back there, got a little bit of a rust hole over there. There's just some stuff that needs to be taken care of, but before I go putting it completely on here. That's when I'll do all the work, but by that point all this will be completely done. Also, being as how I have that thing assembled over there, I can actually take measurements off of that thing to come over to here to make sure that in fact I'm not going to be interfering with something over there when I do swap it over. So that's also a handy thing. Not everybody can do it this way, but this is kind of what I thought about doing, and I was lucky enough to find another frame nearby. Oh, and the other thing too, I didn't mention, but thinking about boxing the frame in a little bit. I don't know if I'll box the whole thing in, but if you're going to do a 4-link, especially, like the upper bars that want to come over and grab the frame, probably be a good idea to, box it in for some strength. But if you're going to just use your bottom bar for your 4-link, I mean, this is basically the same thing, right? I mean, it hooks up to your leaf springs going to your axle. To me, it's no different. So that's the plan, is go ahead and actually take and reuse this basically for the bar over here. But once again, haven't really quite decided yet how we're going to be doing all that, but something that we're researching, and once we get it done, it'll be really nice, and you guys will get to see it the whole time as I'm doing it. So like, subscribe, rumble if you're on Rumble, and come back for more, because we're going to have more for you as we move along.